OSHA 1926 Subpart L, Scaffolds. 1926.450, Scope, Application and Definitions applicable to this subpart. 1926.450, A, Scope and Application. This subpart applies to all scaffolds used in workplaces covered by this part. It does not apply to crane or derrick suspended personnel platforms. The criteria for aerial lifts are set out exclusively in Section 1926.453. 1926.450, B, Definitions. Adjustable suspension scaffold means a suspension scaffold equipped with a hoists that can be operated by an employees on the scaffold. Bearer, putlog, means a horizontal transverse scaffold member, which may be supported by ledgers or runners, upon which the scaffold platform rests and which joins scaffold uprights, posts, poles, and similar members. Bosun's chair means a single-point adjustable suspension scaffold consisting of a seat or sling designed to support one employee in a sitting position. Body belt, safety belt, means a strap with means both for securing it about the waist and for attaching it to a lanyard, lifeline, or deceleration device. Body harness means a design of straps which may be secured about the employee in a manner to distribute the fall arrest forces over at least the thighs, pelvis, waist, chest, and shoulders, with means for attaching it to other components of a personal fall arrest system. Brace means a rigid connection that holds one scaffold member in a fixed position with respect to another member, or to a building or structure. Bricklayer's square scaffold means a supported scaffold composed of framed squares which support a platform. Carpenter's bracket scaffold means a supported scaffold consisting of a platform supported by brackets attached to building or structural walls. Catenary scaffold means a suspension scaffold consisting of a platform supported by two essentially horizontal and parallel ropes attached to structural members of a building or other structure. Additional support may be provided by vertical pickups. Chimney hoist means a multi-point adjustable suspension scaffold used to provide access to work inside chimneys. See multi-point adjustable suspension scaffold. Cleat means a structural block used at the end of a platform to prevent the platform from slipping off its supports. Cleats are also used to provide footing on sloped surfaces such as crawling boards. Competent person means one who is capable of identifying existing and predictable hazards in the surroundings or working conditions which are unsanitary, hazardous, or dangerous to employees, and who has authorization to take prompt corrective measures to eliminate them. Continuous run scaffold means a two-point or multi-point adjustable suspension scaffold constructed using a series of interconnected braced scaffold members or supporting structures erected to form a continuous scaffold. Coupler means a device for locking together the tubes of a tube and coupler scaffold. Crawling board, chicken ladder, means a supported scaffold consisting of a plank with cleats spaced and secured to provide footing, for use on sloped surfaces such as roofs. Deceleration device means any mechanism, such as a rope grab, ripstitch lanyard, specially woven lanyard, tearing or deforming lanyard, or automatic self-retracting lifeline lanyard, which dissipates a substantial amount of energy during a fall arrest or limits the energy imposed on an employee during fall arrest. Double pole, independent pole, scaffold means a supported scaffold consisting of a platforms resting on crossbeams, bearers, supported by ledgers and a double row of uprights independent of support, except ties, guys, braces, from any structure. Equivalent means alternative designs, materials or methods to protect against a hazard which the employer can demonstrate will provide an equal or greater degree of safety for employees than the methods, materials or designs specified in the standard. Exposed power lines means electrical power lines which are accessible to employees and which are not shielded from contact. Such lines do not include extension cords or power tool cords. I-splice means a loop with or without a thimble at the end of a wire rope. Fabricated decking and planking means manufactured platforms made of wood, including laminated wood, and solid sawn wood planks, metal or other materials. Fabricated frame scaffold, tubular welded frame scaffold, means a scaffold consisting of a platform supported on fabricated end frames with integral posts, horizontal bearers, and intermediate members. Failure means load refusal, breakage, or separation of component parts. Load refusal is the point where the ultimate strength is exceeded. Float, ship, scaffold means a suspension scaffold consisting of a braced platform resting on two parallel bearers and hung from overhead supports by ropes of fixed length. Form scaffold means a supported scaffold consisting of a platform supported by brackets attached to formwork. Guardrail system means a vertical barrier consisting of, but not limited to, top rails, mid rails, and posts erected to prevent employees from falling off a scaffold platform or walkway to lower levels. Hoist means a manual or power-operated mechanical device to raise or lower a suspended scaffold. Horse scaffold means a supported scaffold consisting of a platform supported by construction horses, saw horses. Horse scaffolds constructed of metal are sometimes known as trestle scaffolds. Independent pole scaffold, see double pole scaffold. Interior hung scaffold means a suspension scaffold consisting of a platform suspended from the ceiling or roof structure by fixed length supports. Ladder jack scaffold means a supported scaffold consisting of a platform resting on brackets attached to ladders. Ladder stand means a mobile, fixed-size, self-supporting ladder consisting of a wide flat tread ladder in the form of stairs. Landing means a platform at the end of a flight of stairs. Large area scaffold means a pole scaffold, tube and coupler scaffold, systems scaffold, or fabricated frame scaffold erected over substantially the entire work area. For example, a scaffold erected over the entire floor area of a room. Lean-to scaffold means a supported scaffold which is kept erect by tilting it toward and resting it against a building or structure. Lifeline means a component consisting of a flexible line that connects to an anchorage at one end to hang vertically, vertical lifeline, or that connects to anchorages at both ends to stretch horizontally, horizontal lifeline, and which serves as a means for connecting other components of a personal fall arrest system to the anchorage. Lower levels means areas below the level where the employee is located and to which an employee can fall. Such areas include, but are not limited to, ground levels, floors, roofs, ramps, runways, excavations, pits, tanks, materials, water, and equipment. Mason's adjustable supported scaffold, see self-contained adjustable scaffold. Mason's multi-point adjustable suspension scaffold means a continuous run suspension scaffold designed and used for masonry operations. Maximum intended load means the total load of all persons, equipment, tools, materials, transmitted loads, and other loads reasonably anticipated to be applied to a scaffold or scaffold component at any one time. Mobile scaffold means a powered or unpowered, portable, caster or wheel-mounted supported scaffold. Multi-level suspended scaffold means a two-point or multi-point adjustable suspension scaffold with a series of platforms at various levels resting on common stirrups. Multi-point adjustable suspension scaffold means a suspension scaffold consisting of a platforms which is suspended by more than two ropes from overhead supports and equipped with means to raise and lower the platform to desired work levels. Such scaffolds include chimney hoists. Needle beam scaffold means a platform suspended from needle beams. Open sides and ends means the edges of a platform that are more than 14 inches, 36 centimeters away horizontally from a sturdy, continuous, vertical surface, such as a building wall, or a sturdy, continuous horizontal surface, such as a floor, or a point of access. Exception: for plastering and lathing operations, the horizontal threshold distance is 18 inches, 46 centimeters. Outrigger means the structural member of a supported scaffold used to increase the base width of a scaffold in order to provide support for and increased stability of the scaffold. Outrigger beam, thrust out, means the structural member of a suspension scaffold or outrigger scaffold which provides support for the scaffold by extending the scaffold point of attachment to a point out and away from the structure or building. Outrigger scaffold means a supported scaffold consisting of a platform resting on outrigger beams, thrust-outs, projecting beyond the wall or face of the building or structure, the inboard ends of which are secured inside the building or structure. Overhand bricklaying means the process of laying bricks in masonry units such that the surface of the wall to be jointed is on the opposite side of the wall from the mason, requiring the mason to lean over the wall to complete the work. It includes mason tending and electrical installation incorporated into the brick wall during the overhand bricklaying process. Personal fall arrest system means a system used to arrest an employee's fall. It consists of an anchorage, connectors, a body belt or body harness and may include a lanyard, deceleration device, lifeline, or combinations of these. Platform means a work surface elevated above lower levels. Platforms can be constructed using individual wood planks, fabricated decks, and fabricated platforms. Pole scaffold, see definitions for single pole scaffold and double, independent, pole scaffold. Power-operated hoist means a hoist which is powered by other than human energy. Pump jack scaffold means a supported scaffold consisting of a platform supported by vertical poles and movable support brackets. Qualified means one who, by possession of a recognized degree, certificate, or professional standing, or who by extensive knowledge, training, and experience, has successfully demonstrated his/her ability to solve or resolve problems related to the subject matter, the work, or the project. Rated load means the manufacturer's specified maximum load to be lifted by a hoist or to be applied to a scaffold or scaffold component. Repair bracket scaffold means a supported scaffold consisting of a platform supported by brackets which are secured in place around the circumference or perimeter of a chimney, stack, tank, or other supporting structure by one or more wire ropes placed around the supporting structure. Roof bracket scaffold means a rooftop supported scaffold consisting of a platform resting on angular-shaped supports. Runner, ledger, or ribbon means the lengthwise horizontal spacing or bracing member which may support the bearers. Scaffold means any temporary elevated platform, supported or suspended, and its supporting structure, including points of anchorage, used for supporting employees or materials, or both. Self-contained adjustable scaffold means a combination supported and suspension scaffold consisting of an adjustable platforms mounted on an independent supporting frames not a part of the object being worked on, and which is equipped with a means to permit the raising and lowering of the platforms. Such systems include rolling roof rigs, rolling outrigger systems, and some masons' adjustable supported scaffolds. Shore scaffold means a supported scaffold which is placed against a building or structure and held in place with props. Single-point adjustable suspension scaffold means a suspension scaffold consisting of a platform suspended by one rope from an overhead support and equipped with means to permit the movement of the platform to desired work levels. Single-pole scaffold means a supported scaffold consisting of a platforms resting on bearers, the outside ends of which are supported on runners secured to a single row of posts or uprights, and the inner ends of which are supported on or in a structure or building wall. Stair tower, scaffold stairway/tower, means a tower comprised of scaffold components and which contains internal stairway units and rest platforms. These towers are used to provide access to scaffold platforms and other elevated points such as floors and roofs. Stall load means the load at which the prime mover of a power-operated hoist stalls or the power to the prime mover is automatically disconnected. Step, platform, and trestle ladder scaffold means a platform resting directly on the rungs of step ladders or trestle ladders. Stilts means a pair of poles or similar supports with raised footrests, used to permit walking above the ground or working surface. Stonesetter's multi-point adjustable suspension scaffold means a continuous run suspension scaffold designed and used for stonesetter's operations. Supported scaffold means one or more platforms supported by outrigger beams, brackets, poles, legs, uprights, posts, frames, or similar rigid support. Suspension scaffold means one or more platforms suspended by ropes or other non-rigid means from an overhead structures. System scaffold means a scaffold consisting of posts with fixed connection points that accept runners, bearers, and diagonals that can be interconnected at predetermined levels. Tank builder's scaffold means a supported scaffold consisting of a platform resting on brackets that are either directly attached to a cylindrical tank or attached to devices that are attached to such a tank. Top plate bracket scaffold means a scaffold supported by brackets that hook over or are attached to the top of a wall. This type of scaffold is similar to carpenter's bracket scaffolds and form scaffolds and is used in residential construction for setting trusses. Tube and coupler scaffold means a supported or suspended scaffold consisting of a platforms supported by tubing, erected with coupling devices connecting uprights, braces, bearers, and runners. Tubular welded frame scaffold, see fabricated frame scaffold. Two-point suspension scaffold, swing stage, means a suspension scaffold consisting of a platform supported by hangers, stirrups, suspended by two ropes from overhead supports and equipped with means to permit the raising and lowering of the platform to desired work levels. Unstable objects means items whose strength, configuration, or lack of stability may allow them to become dislocated and shift and therefore may not properly support the loads imposed on them. Unstable objects do not constitute a safe base support for scaffolds, platforms, or employees. Examples include, but are not limited to, barrels, boxes, loose brick, and concrete blocks. Vertical pickup means a rope used to support the horizontal rope in catenary scaffolds. Walkway means a portion of a scaffold platform used only for access and not as a work level. Window jack scaffold means a platform resting on a bracket or jack which projects through a window opening. 1926.451 General Requirements. This section does not apply to aerial lifts, the criteria for which are set out exclusively in 1926.453. 1926.451 A. Capacity. 1926.451 A1, except as provided in paragraphs A2, A3, A4, A5, and G of this section, each scaffold and scaffold component shall be capable of supporting, without failure, its own weight and at least 4 times the maximum intended load applied or transmitted to it. 1926.451 A2, direct connections to roofs and floors, and counterweights used to balance adjustable suspension scaffolds, shall be capable of resisting at least 4 times the tipping moment imposed by the scaffold operating at the rated load of the hoist, or 1.5, minimum, times the tipping moment imposed by the scaffold operating at the stall load of the hoist, whichever is greater. 1926.451 A3, each suspension rope, including connecting hardware, used on non-adjustable suspension scaffolds shall be capable of supporting, without failure, at least 6 times the maximum intended load applied or transmitted to that rope. 1926.451 A4, each suspension rope, including connecting hardware, used on adjustable suspension scaffolds shall be capable of supporting, without failure, at least 6 times the maximum intended load applied or transmitted to that rope with the scaffold operating at either the rated load of the hoist, or 2, minimum, times the stall load of the hoist, whichever is greater. 1926.451 A5, the stall load of any scaffold hoist shall not exceed 3 times its rated load. 1926.451 A6, scaffolds shall be designed by a qualified person and shall be constructed and loaded in accordance with that design. Non-mandatory Appendix A to this subpart contains examples of criteria that will enable an employer to comply with paragraph A of this section. 1926.451 B. Scaffold platform construction. 1926.451 B1, each platform on all working levels of scaffolds shall be fully planked or decked between the front uprights and the guardrail supports as follows. 1926.451 B1 I, each platform unit, e.g., scaffold plank, fabricated deck, or fabricated platform, shall be installed so that the space between adjacent units and the space between the platform and the uprights is no more than 1 inch 2.5 centimeters wide, except where the employer can demonstrate that a wider space is necessary, for example, to fit around uprights when side brackets are used to extend the width of the platform. 1926.451 B1, 2, where the employer makes the demonstration provided for in paragraph B1 I of this section, the platform shall be planked or decked as fully as possible and the remaining open space between the platform and the upright shall not exceed 9.5 inches, 24.1 centimeters. Exception to paragraph B1. The requirement in paragraph B1 to provide full planking or decking does not apply to platforms used solely as walkways or solely by employees performing scaffold erection or dismantling. In these situations, only the planking that the employer establishes is necessary to provide safe working conditions is required. 1926.451 B2, except as provided in paragraphs B2 I and B2 2 of this section, each scaffold platform and walkway shall be at least 18 inches 46 centimeters wide. 1926.451 B2 I, each ladder jack scaffold, top plate bracket scaffold, roof bracket scaffold, and pump jack scaffold shall be at least 12 inches 30 centimeters wide. There is no minimum width requirement for bosun's chairs. Note to paragraph B2 I. Pursuant to an administrative stay effective November 29, 1996 and published in the Federal Register on November 25, 1996, the requirement in paragraph B2I that roof bracket scaffolds be at least 12 inches wide is stayed until November 25, 1997, or until rulemaking regarding the minimum width of roof bracket scaffolds has been completed, whichever is later. 1926.451 B2(2), where scaffolds must be used in areas that the employer can demonstrate are so narrow that platforms and walkways cannot be at least 18 inches 46 centimeters wide, such platforms and walkways shall be as wide as feasible, and employees on those platforms and walkways shall be protected from fall hazards by the use of guardrails and/or personal fall arrest systems. 1926.451 B3, except as provided in paragraphs B3I and 2 of this section, the front edge of all platforms shall not be more than 14 inches 36 centimeters from the face of the work, unless guardrail systems are erected along the front edge and/or personal fall arrest systems are used in accordance with paragraph G of this section to protect employees from falling. 1926.451 B3I, the maximum distance from the face for outrigger scaffolds shall be 3 inches 8 centimeters. 1926.451 B3(2), the maximum distance from the face for plastering and lathing operations shall be 18 inches 46 centimeters. 1926.451 B4, each end of a platform, unless cleated or otherwise restrained by hooks or equivalent means, shall extend over the centerline of its support at least 6 inches 15 centimeters. 1926.451 B5, 1926.451 B5I, each end of a platform 10 feet or less in length shall not extend over its support more than 12 inches 30 centimeters unless the platform is designed and installed so that the cantilevered portion of the platform is able to support employees and/or materials without tipping, or has guardrails which block employee access to the cantilevered end. 1926.451 B5(2), each platform greater than 10 feet in length shall not extend over its support more than 18 inches 46 centimeters, unless it is designed and installed so that the cantilevered portion of the platform is able to support employees without tipping, or has guardrails which block employee access to the cantilevered end. 1926.451 B6, on scaffolds where scaffold planks are abutted to create a long platform, each abutted end shall rest on a separate support surface. This provision does not preclude the use of common support members, such as T-sections, to support abutting planks, or hook-on platforms designed to rest on common supports. 1926.451 B7, on scaffolds where platforms are overlapped to create a long platform, the overlap shall occur only over supports, and shall not be less than 12 inches 30 centimeters unless the platforms are nailed together or otherwise restrained to prevent movement. 1926.451 B8, at all points of a scaffold where the platform changes direction, such as turning a corner, any platform that rests on a bearer at an angle other than a right angle shall be laid first, and platforms which rest at right angles over the same bearer shall be laid second, on top of the first platform. 1926.451 B9, wood platforms shall not be covered with opaque finishes, except that platform edges may be covered or marked for identification. Platforms may be coated periodically with wood preservatives, fire-retardant finishes, and slip-resistant finishes. However, the coating may not obscure the top or bottom wood surfaces. 1926.451 B10, scaffold components manufactured by different manufacturers shall not be intermixed unless the components fit together without force and the scaffold's structural integrity is maintained by the user. Scaffold components manufactured by different manufacturers shall not be modified in order to intermix them unless a competent person determines the resulting scaffold is structurally sound. 1926.451 B11, scaffold components made of dissimilar metals shall not be used together unless a competent person has determined that galvanic action will not reduce the strength of any component to a level below that required by paragraph A1 of this section. 1926.451 C. Criteria for supported scaffolds. 1926.451 C1. Supported scaffolds with a height to base width, including outrigger supports, if used, ratio of more than 4:1, shall be restrained from tipping by guying, tying, bracing, or equivalent means, as follows. 1926.451 C1 I. Guys, ties, and braces shall be installed at locations where horizontal members support both inner and outer legs. 1926.451 C. 1, 2, guys, ties, and braces shall be installed according to the scaffold manufacturer's recommendations or at the closest horizontal member to the 4:1 height and be repeated vertically at locations of horizontal members every 20 feet 6.1 meters, or less thereafter for scaffolds 3 feet 0.91 meters wide or less, and every 26 feet 7.9 meters or less thereafter for scaffolds greater than 3 feet 0.91 meters wide. The top guy, tie, or brace of completed scaffolds shall be placed no further than the 4:1 height from the top. Such guys, ties, and braces shall be installed at each end of the scaffold and at horizontal intervals not to exceed 30 feet 9.1 meters measured from one end, not both, towards the other. 1926.451 C. 1, 3, ties, guys, braces, or outriggers shall be used to prevent the tipping of supported scaffolds in all circumstances where an eccentric load, such as a cantilevered work platform, is applied or is transmitted to the scaffold. 1926.451 C. 2, supported scaffold poles, legs, posts, frames, and uprights shall bear on baseplates and mud sills or other adequate firm foundation. 1926.451 C. 2, I, footings shall be level, sound, rigid, and capable of supporting the loaded scaffold without settling or displacement. 1926.451 C. 2, 2, unstable objects shall not be used to support scaffolds or platform units. 1926.451 C. 2, 3, unstable objects shall not be used as working platforms. 1926.451 C. 2, 4, front-end loaders and similar pieces of equipment shall not be used to support scaffold platforms unless they have been specifically designed by the manufacturer for such use. 1926.451 C. 2, v. forklifts shall not be used to support scaffold platforms unless the entire platform is attached to the fork and the forklift is not moved horizontally while the platform is occupied. 1926.451 C. 3, supported scaffold poles, legs, posts, frames, and uprights shall be plumb and braced to prevent swaying and displacement. 1926.451 D. Criteria for suspension scaffolds. 1926.451 D. 1. All suspension scaffold support devices, such as outrigger beams, cornice hooks, parapet clamps, and similar devices, shall rest on surfaces capable of supporting at least 4 times the load imposed on them by the scaffold operating at the rated load of the hoist, or at least 1.5 times the load imposed on them by the scaffold at the stall capacity of the hoist, whichever is greater. 1926.451 D. 2. Suspension scaffold outrigger beams, when used, shall be made of structural metal or equivalent strength material, and shall be restrained to prevent movement. 1926.451 D. 3. The inboard ends of suspension scaffold outrigger beams shall be stabilized by bolts or other direct connections to the floor or roof deck, or they shall have their inboard ends stabilized by counterweights, except Mason's multi-point adjustable suspension scaffold outrigger beams shall not be stabilized by counterweights. 1926.451 D. 3, I. Before the scaffold is used, direct connections shall be evaluated by a competent person who shall confirm, based on the evaluation, that the supporting surfaces are capable of supporting the loads to be imposed. In addition, Mason's multi-point adjustable suspension scaffold connections shall be designed by an engineer experienced in such scaffold design. 1926.451 D. 3, 2, counterweights shall be made of non-flowable material. Sand, gravel, and similar materials that can be easily dislocated shall not be used as counterweights. 1926.451 D. 3, 3, only those items specifically designed as counterweights shall be used to counterweight scaffold systems. Construction materials such as, but not limited to, masonry units and rolls of roofing felt, shall not be used as counterweights. 1926.451 D. 3, 4, counterweights shall be secured by mechanical means to the outrigger beams to prevent accidental displacement. 1926.451 D. 3, v. counterweights shall not be removed from an outrigger beam until the scaffold is disassembled. 1926.451 D. 3, 6, Outrigger beams which are not stabilized by bolts or other direct connections to the floor or roof deck shall be secured by tiebacks. 1926.451 D. 3, 7. Tieback shall be equivalent in strength to the suspension ropes. 1926.451 D. 3, 8. Outrigger beams shall be placed perpendicular to its bearing support, usually the face of the building or structure. However, where the employer can demonstrate that it is not possible to place an outrigger beam perpendicular to the face of the building or structure because of obstructions that cannot be moved, the outrigger beam may be placed at some other angle, provided opposing angle tiebacks are used. 1926.451 D. 3, 9. Tieback shall be secured to a structurally sound anchorage on the building or structure. Sound anchorages include structural members, but do not include standpipes, vents, other piping systems, or electrical conduit. 1926.451 D. 3, X. Tieback shall be installed perpendicular to the face of the building or structure, or opposing angle tiebacks shall be installed. Single tiebacks installed at an angle are prohibited. 1926.451 D. 4. Suspension scaffold outrigger beams shall be 1926.451 D. 4 I through 1926.451 D. 4 V. Provided with stop bolts or shackles at both ends, securely fastened together with the flanges turned out when channel iron beams are used in place of I-beams, installed with all bearing supports perpendicular to the beam center line, set and maintained with the web in a vertical position, and when an outrigger beam is used, the shackle or clevis with which the rope is attached to the outrigger beam shall be placed directly over the center line of the stirrup. 1926.451 D. 5. Suspension scaffold support devices such as cornice hooks, roof irons, parapet clamps, or similar devices shall be 1926.451 D. 5 I through 1926.451 D. 5 4. Made of steel, wrought iron, or materials of equivalent strength, supported by bearing blocks, and secured against movement by tiebacks installed at right angles to the face of the building or structure, or opposing angle tiebacks shall be installed and secured to a structurally sound point of anchorage on the building or structure. Sound points of anchorage include structural members, but do not include standpipes, vents, other piping systems, or electrical conduit. Tieback shall be equivalent in strength to the hoisting rope. 1926.451 D. 6. When winding drum hoists are used on a suspension scaffold, they shall contain not less than 4 wraps of the suspension rope at the lowest point of scaffold travel. When other types of hoists are used, the suspension ropes shall be long enough to allow the scaffold to be lowered to the level below without the rope end passing through the hoist, or the rope end shall be configured or provided with means to prevent the end from passing through the hoist. 1926.451 D. 7. The use of repaired wire rope as suspension rope is prohibited. 1926.451 D. 8. Wire suspension ropes shall not be joined together except through the use of I-splice thimbles connected with shackles or cover plates and bolts. 1926.451 D. 9. The load end of wire suspension ropes shall be equipped with proper size thimbles and secured by I-splicing or equivalent means. 1926.451 D. 10. Ropes shall be inspected for defects by a competent person prior to each workshift and after every occurrence which could affect a rope's integrity. Ropes shall be replaced if any of the following conditions exist. 1926.451 D. 10 I through 1926.451 D. 10 6. Any physical damage which impairs the function and strength of the rope. Kinks that might impair the tracking or wrapping of rope around the DRA or sheaves. 6 randomly distributed broken wires in one rope lay or 3 broken wires in one strand in one rope lay. Abrasion, corrosion, scrubbing, flattening or peening causing loss of more than 1/3 of the original diameter of the outside wires. Heat damage caused by a torch or any damage caused by contact with electrical wires. Evidence that the secondary brake has been activated during an overspeed condition and has engaged the suspension rope. 1926.451 D. 11. Swaged attachments for spliced eyes on wire suspension ropes shall not be used unless they are made by the wire rope manufacturer or a qualified person. 1926.451 D. 12. when wire rope clips are used on suspension scaffolds. 1926.451 D12 I through 1926.451 D12 6. There shall be a minimum of 3 wire rope clips installed, with the clips a minimum of 6 rope diameters apart. Clips shall be installed according to the manufacturer's recommendations. Clips shall be retightened to the manufacturer's recommendations after the initial loading. Clips shall be inspected and retightened to the manufacturer's recommendations at the start of each work shift thereafter. U-bolt clips shall not be used at the point of suspension for any scaffold hoist. When U-bolt clips are used, the U-bolt shall be placed over the dead end of the rope, and the saddle shall be placed over the live end of the rope. 1926.451 D13. Suspension scaffold power-operated hoists and manual hoists shall be tested by a qualified testing laboratory. 1926.451 D14. Gasoline-powered equipment and hoists shall not be used on suspension scaffolds. 1926.451 D15. Gears and brakes of power-operated hoists used on suspension scaffolds shall be enclosed. 1926.451 D16. In addition to the normal operating brake, suspension scaffold power-operated hoists and manually operated hoists shall have a braking device or locking pawl which engages automatically when a hoist makes either of the following uncontrolled movements: an instantaneous change in momentum or an accelerated overspeed. 1926.451 D17. Manually operated hoists shall require a positive crank force to descend. 1926.451 D18. Two-point and multi-point suspension scaffolds shall be tied or otherwise secured to prevent them from swaying, as determined to be necessary based on an evaluation by a competent person. Window cleaners' anchors shall not be used for this purpose. 1926.451 D19. Devices whose sole function is to provide emergency escape and rescue shall not be used as working platforms. This provision does not preclude the use of systems which are designed to function both as suspension scaffolds and emergency systems. 1926.451 E. Access. This paragraph applies to scaffold access for all employees. Access requirements for employees erecting or dismantling supported scaffolds are specifically addressed in paragraph E9 of this section. 1926.451 E1. When scaffold platforms are more than 2 feet 0.6 meters above or below a point of access, portable ladders, hook-on ladders, attachable ladders, stair towers, scaffold stairways/towers, stairway-type ladders, such as ladder stands, ramps, walkways, integral prefabricated scaffold access, or direct access from another scaffold, structure, personnel hoist, or similar surface shall be used. Crossbraces shall not be used as a means of access. 1926.451 E2. Portable, hook-on, and attachable ladders. Additional requirements for the proper construction and use of portable ladders are contained in Subpart X of this part. Stairways and ladders. 1926.451 E2 I through 1926.451 E2 6. Portable, hook-on, and attachable ladders shall be positioned so as not to tip the scaffold. Hook-on and attachable ladders shall be positioned so that their bottom rung is not more than 24 inches, 61 centimeters, above the scaffold supporting level. When hook-on and attachable ladders are used on a supported scaffold more than 35 feet, 10.7 meters high, they shall have rest platforms at 35 foot, 10.7 m, maximum vertical intervals. Hook-on and attachable ladders shall be specifically designed for use with the type of scaffold used. Hook-on and attachable ladders shall have a minimum rung length of 11.5 inches, 29 centimeters, and hook-on and attachable ladders shall have uniformly spaced rungs with a maximum spacing between rungs of 16 3/4 inches. 1926.451 E3. Stairway-type ladders shall. 1926.451 E3 I through 1926.451 E3 4. Be positioned such that their bottom step is not more than 24 inches, 61 centimeters above the scaffold supporting level. Be provided with rest platforms at 12 foot, 3.7 m, maximum vertical intervals. Have a minimum step width of 16 inches, 41 centimeters, except that mobile scaffold stairway-type ladders shall have a minimum step width of 11.5 inches, 30 centimeters, and have slip-resistant treads on all steps and landings. 1926.451 E4. Stair towers, scaffold stairway/towers, shall be positioned such that their bottom step is not more than 24 inches, 61 centimeters, above the scaffold supporting level. 1926.451 E4 I through 1926.451 E4 V. A stair rail consisting of a top rail and a mid rail shall be provided on each side of each scaffold stairway. The top rail of each stair rail system shall also be capable of serving as a handrail, unless a separate handrail is provided. Handrails and top rails that serve as handrails shall provide an adequate handhold for employees grasping them to avoid falling. Stair rail systems and handrails shall be surfaced to prevent injury to employees from punctures or lacerations, and to prevent snagging of clothing. The ends of stair rail systems and handrails shall be constructed so that they do not constitute a projection hazard. 1926.451 E4 6 through 1926.451 E4 X. Handrails and top rails that are used as handrails shall be at least 3 inches 7.6 centimeters from other objects. Stair rails shall be not less than 28 inches 71 centimeters nor more than 37 inches 94 centimeters from the upper surface of the stair rail to the surface of the tread, in line with the face of the riser at the forward edge of the tread. A landing platform at least 18 inches 45.7 centimeters wide by at least 18 inches 45.7 centimeters long shall be provided at each level. Each scaffold stairway shall be at least 18 inches 45.7 centimeters wide between stair rails. Treads and landings shall have slip-resistant surfaces. 1926.451 E4 11 through 1926.451 E4 14. Stairway shall be installed between 40 degrees and 60 degrees from the horizontal. Guardrails meeting the requirements of paragraph G4 of this section shall be provided on the open sides and ends of each landing. Riser height shall be uniform, within a quarter inch 0.6 centimeters for each flight of stairs. Greater variations in riser height are allowed for the top and bottom steps of the entire system, not for each flight of stairs. Tread depth shall be uniform, within a quarter inch for each flight of stairs. 1926.451 E5 Ramps and walkways. 1926.451 E5 I through 1926.451 E5 3. Ramps and walkways 6 feet 1.8 meters or more above lower levels shall have guardrail systems which comply with Subpart M of this part fall protection. No ramp or walkway shall be inclined more than a slope of 1 vertical to 3 horizontal, 20 degrees above the horizontal. If the slope of a ramp or a walkway is steeper than 1 vertical and 8 horizontal, the ramp or walkway shall have cleats not more than 14 inches 35 centimeters apart which are securely fastened to the planks to provide footing. 1926.451 E6 Integral prefabricated scaffold access frames shall. 1926.451 E6 I through 1926.451 E6 6. Be specifically designed and constructed for use as ladder rungs, have a rung length of at least 8 inches 20 centimeters, not be used as work platforms when rungs are less than 11.5 inches in length, unless each affected employee uses fall protection or a positioning device which complies with 1926.502. Be uniformly spaced within each frame section. Be provided with rest platforms at 35 foot 10.7 m, maximum vertical intervals on all supported scaffolds more than 35 feet 10.7 meters high, and have a maximum spacing between rungs of 16 3/4 inches 43 centimeters. Non-uniform rung spacing caused by joining end frames together is allowed, provided the resulting spacing does not exceed 16 3/4 inches 43 centimeters. 1926.451 E7 Steps and rungs of ladder and stairway type access shall line up vertically with each other between rest platforms. 1926.451 E8 Direct access to or from another surface shall be used only when the scaffold is not more than 14 inches 36 centimeters horizontally and not more than 24 inches 61 centimeters vertically from the other surface. 1926.451 E9 Effective September 2, 1997, access for employees erecting or dismantling supported scaffolds shall be in accordance with the following. 1926.451 E9 I through 1926.451 E9 4 The employer shall provide safe means of access for each employee erecting or dismantling a scaffold where the provision of safe access is feasible and does not create a greater hazard. The employer shall have a competent person determine whether it is feasible or would pose a greater hazard to provide, and have employees use a safe means of access. This determination shall be based on site conditions and the type of scaffold being erected or dismantled. Hook-on or attachable ladders shall be installed as soon as scaffold erection has progressed to a point that permits safe installation and use. When erecting or dismantling tubular welded frame scaffolds, end frames, with horizontal members that are parallel, level and are not more than 22 inches apart vertically may be used as climbing devices for access, provided they are erected in a manner that creates a usable ladder and provides good hand hold and foot space. Cross braces on tubular welded frame scaffolds shall not be used as a means of access or egress. 1926.451, F. Use. 1926.451, F. 1. Scaffolds and scaffold components shall not be loaded in excess of their maximum intended loads or rated capacities, whichever is less. 1926.451, F. 2. The use of shore or lean-to scaffolds is prohibited. 1926.451, F. 3. Scaffolds and scaffold components shall be inspected for visible defects by a competent person before each work shift, and after any occurrence which could affect a scaffold's structural integrity. 1926.451, F. 4. Any part of a scaffold damaged or weakened such that its strength is less than that required by paragraph A of this section shall be immediately repaired or replaced, braced to meet those provisions, or removed from service until repaired. 1926.451, F. 5. Scaffolds shall not be moved horizontally while employees are on them, unless they have been designed by a registered professional engineer specifically for such movement or, for mobile scaffolds, where the provisions of 1926.452, W, are followed. 1926.451, F. 6. The clearance between scaffolds and power lines shall be as follows. Scaffolds shall not be erected, used, dismantled, altered, or moved such that they or any conductive material handled on them might come closer to exposed and energized power lines than as follows. For insulated lines less than 300 volts stay a minimum of 3 feet, or 0.9 meters. For insulated lines 300 volts to 50 kV stay a minimum of 10 feet, or 3.1 meters. For insulated lines more than 50 kV stay a minimum of 10 feet, or 3.1 meters, plus 0.4 inches, 1 centimeter, for each 1 kV over 50 kV. An alternative is 2 times the length of the line insulator, but never less than 10 feet, 3.1 meters. For uninsulated lines less than 50 kV stay a minimum of 10 feet, or 3.1 meters. For uninsulated lines more than 50 kV stay a minimum of 10 feet, or 3.1 meters, plus 0.4 inches, 1 centimeter, for each 1 kV over 50 kV. An alternative is 2 times the length of the line insulator, but never less than 10 feet, 3.1 meters. 1926.451, F. 7. Scaffolds shall be erected, moved, dismantled, or altered only under the supervision and direction of a competent person qualified in scaffold erection, moving, dismantling or alteration. Such activities shall be performed only by experienced and trained employees selected for such work by the competent person. 1926.451, F. 8. Employees shall be prohibited from working on scaffolds covered with snow, ice, or other slippery material except as necessary for removal of such materials. 1926.451, F. 9. Where swinging loads are being hoisted onto or near scaffolds such that the loads might contact the scaffold, tag lines or equivalent measures to control the loads shall be used. 1926.451, F. 10. Suspension ropes supporting adjustable suspension scaffolds shall be of a diameter large enough to provide sufficient surface area for the functioning of brake and hoist mechanisms. 1926.451, F. 11. Suspension ropes shall be shielded from heat-producing processes. When acids or other corrosive substances are used on a scaffold, the rope shall be shielded, treated to protect against the corrosive substances, or shall be of a material that will not be damaged by the substance being used. 1926.451, F. 12. Work on or from scaffolds is prohibited during storms or high winds unless a competent person has determined that it is safe for employees to be on the scaffold and those employees are protected by a personal fall arrest system or windscreens. Windscreens shall not be used unless the scaffold is secured against the anticipated wind forces imposed. 1926.451 F13. Debris shall not be allowed to accumulate on platforms. 1926.451 F14. Makeshift devices, such as but not limited to boxes and barrels, shall not be used on top of scaffold platforms to increase the working level height of employees. 1926.451 F15. Ladders shall not be used on scaffolds to increase the working level height of employees, except on large area scaffolds where employers have satisfied the following criteria. 1926.451 F15 I through 1926.451 F15 4. When the ladder is placed against a structure which is not a part of the scaffold shall be secured against the sideways thrust exerted by the ladder. The platform units shall be secured to the scaffold to prevent their movement. The ladder legs shall be on the same platform or other means shall be provided to stabilize the ladder against unequal platform deflection, and the ladder legs shall be secured to prevent them from slipping or being pushed off the platform. 1926.451 F16. Platforms shall not deflect more than 1/60th of the span when loaded. 1926.451 F17. To reduce the possibility of welding current arcing through the suspension wire rope when performing welding from suspended scaffolds, the following precautions shall be taken, as applicable. 1926.451 F17 I. An insulated thimble shall be used to attach each suspension wire rope to its hanging support, such as cornice hook or outrigger. Excess suspension wire rope and any additional independent lines from grounding shall be insulated. 1926.451 F17 2. The suspension wire rope shall be covered with insulating material extending at least 4 feet (1.2 meters) above the hoist. If there is a tail line below the hoist, it shall be insulated to prevent contact with the platform. The portion of the tail line that hangs free below the scaffold shall be guided or retained, or both, so that it does not become grounded. 1926.451 F17 3. Each hoist shall be covered with insulated protective covers. 1926.451 F17 4. In addition to a work lead attachment required by the welding process, a grounding conductor shall be connected from the scaffold to the structure. The size of this conductor shall be at least the size of the welding process work lead, and this conductor shall not be in series with the welding process or the workpiece. 1926.451 F17 V. If the scaffold grounding lead is disconnected at any time, the welding machine shall be shut off, and 1926.451 F17 6. An active welding rod or uninsulated welding lead shall not be allowed to contact the scaffold or its suspension system. 1926.451 G. Fall protection. 1926.451 G1. Each employee on a scaffold more than 10 feet (3.1 meters) above a lower level shall be protected from falling to that lower level. Paragraphs G1 I through 7 of this section establish the types of fall protection to be provided to the employees on each type of scaffold. Paragraph G2 of this section addresses fall protection for scaffold erectors and dismantlers. Note to paragraph G1. The fall protection requirements for employees installing suspension scaffold support systems on floors, roofs, and other elevated surfaces are set forth in Subpart M of this part. 1926.451 G1 I through 1926.451 G1 3. Each employee on a bosun's chair, catenary scaffold, float scaffold, needle beam scaffold, or ladder jack scaffold shall be protected by a personal fall arrest system. Each employee on a single point or 2-point adjustable suspension scaffold shall be protected by both a personal fall arrest system and guardrail system. Each employee on a crawling board, chicken ladder, shall be protected by a personal fall arrest system, a guardrail system, with minimum 200-pound top rail capacity, or by a 3/4 inch, 1.9 centimeters diameter grab line or equivalent handhold securely fastened beside each crawling board. 1926.451 G1 4 through 1926.451 G1 7. Each employee on a self-contained adjustable scaffold shall be protected by a guardrail system, with minimum 200-pound top rail capacity, when the platform is supported by the frame structure, and by both a personal fall arrest system and a guardrail system, with minimum 200-pound top rail capacity, when the platform is supported by ropes. Each employee on a walkway located within a scaffold shall be protected by a guardrail system, with minimum 200-pound top rail capacity, installed within 9.5 inches, 24.1 centimeters, of and along at least one side of the walkway. Each employee performing overhand bricklaying operations from a supported scaffold shall be protected from falling from all open sides and ends of the scaffold, except at the side next to the wall being laid, by the use of a personal fall arrest system, or guardrail system, with minimum 200-pound top rail capacity. For all scaffolds not otherwise specified in paragraphs G1I through G1-6 of this section, each employee shall be protected by the use of personal fall arrest systems or guardrail systems meeting the requirements of paragraph G4 of this section. 1926.451 G2. Effective September 2, 1997, the employer shall have a competent person determine the feasibility and safety of providing fall protection for employees erecting or dismantling supported scaffolds. Employers are required to provide fall protection for employees erecting or dismantling supported scaffolds where the installation and use of such protection is feasible and does not create a greater hazard. 1926.451 G3. In addition to meeting the requirements of 1926.502 D, personal fall arrest systems used on scaffolds shall be attached by lanyard to a vertical lifeline, horizontal lifeline, or scaffold structural member. Vertical lifelines shall not be used when overhead components, such as overhead protection or additional platform levels, are part of a single-point or two-point adjustable suspension scaffold. 1926.451 G3I through 1926.451 G3-4, when vertical lifelines are used, they shall be fastened to a fixed safe point of anchorage, shall be independent of the scaffold, and shall be protected from sharp edges and abrasion. Safe points of anchorage include structural members of buildings, but do not include standpipes, vents, other piping systems, electrical conduit, outrigger beams, or counterweights. When horizontal lifelines are used, they shall be secured to two or more structural members of the scaffold, or they may be looped around both suspension and independent suspension lines, on scaffolds so equipped, above the hoist and brake attached to the end of the scaffold. Horizontal lifelines shall not be attached only to the suspension ropes. When lanyards are connected to horizontal lifelines or structural members on a single-point or two-point adjustable suspension scaffold, the scaffold shall be equipped with additional independent support lines and automatic locking devices capable of stopping the fall of the scaffold in the event one or both of the suspension ropes fail. The independent support lines shall be equal in number and strength to the suspension ropes. Vertical lifelines, independent support lines, and suspension ropes shall not be attached to each other, nor shall they be attached to or use the same point of anchorage, nor shall they be attached to the same point on the scaffold or personal fall arrest system. 1926.451 G4. Guardrail systems installed to meet the requirements of this section shall comply with the following provisions. Guardrail systems built in accordance with Appendix A to this subpart will be deemed to meet the requirements of paragraphs G4, 7, 8, and 9 of this section. 1926.451 G4I through 1926.451 G4-4. Guardrail systems shall be installed along all open sides and ends of platforms. Guardrail systems shall be installed before the scaffold is released for use by employees other than erection/dismantling crews. The top edge height of top rails or equivalent member on supported scaffolds manufactured or placed in service after January 1, 2000 shall be installed between 38 inches (0.97 meters) and 45 inches (1.2 meters) above the platform surface. The top edge height on supported scaffolds manufactured and placed in service before January 1, 2000, and on all suspended scaffolds where both a guardrail and a personal fall arrest system are required shall be between 36 inches (0.9 meters) and 45 inches (1.2 meters). When conditions warrant, the height of the top edge may exceed the 45-inch height, provided the guardrail system meets all other criteria of paragraph G4. When mid-rails, screens, mesh, intermediate vertical members, solid panels, or equivalent structural members are used, they shall be installed between the top edge of the guardrail system and the scaffold platform. When mid-rails are used, they shall be installed at a height approximately midway between the top edge of the guardrail system and the platform surface. 1926.451 G4V through 1926.451 G4-9. When screens and mesh are used, They shall extend from the top edge of the guardrail system to the scaffold platform, and along the entire opening between the supports. When intermediate members, such as balusters or additional rails, are used, they shall not be more than 19 inches 48 centimeters apart. Each top rail or equivalent member of a guardrail system shall be capable of withstanding, without failure, a force applied in any downward or horizontal direction at any point along its top edge of at least 100 pounds 445 N for guardrail systems installed on single-point adjustable suspension scaffolds or two-point adjustable suspension scaffolds, and at least 200 pounds 890 N for guardrail systems installed on all other scaffolds. When the loads specified in paragraph G4(7) of this section are applied in a downward direction, the top edge shall not drop below the height above the platform surface that is prescribed in paragraph G4(2) of this section. Midrails, screens, mesh, intermediate vertical members, solid panels, and equivalent structural members of a guardrail system shall be capable of withstanding, without failure, a force applied in any downward or horizontal direction at any point along the midrail or other member of at least 75 pounds 333 N for guardrail systems with a minimum 100-pound top rail capacity, and at least 150 pounds 666 N for guardrail systems with a minimum 200-pound top rail capacity. 1926.451 G4X Suspension scaffold hoists and non-walk-through stirrups may be used as end guardrails if the space between the hoist or stirrup and the side guardrail or structure does not allow passage of an employee to the end of the scaffold. 1926.451 G411 through 1926.451 G415 Guardrails shall be surfaced to prevent injury to an employee from punctures or lacerations, and to prevent snagging of clothing. The ends of all rails shall not overhang the terminal posts except when such overhang does not constitute a projection hazard to employees. Steel or plastic banding shall not be used as a top rail or mid rail. Manila or plastic or other synthetic rope being used for top rails or mid rails shall be inspected by a competent person as frequently as necessary to ensure that it continues to meet the strength requirements of paragraph G of this section. Cross bracing is acceptable in place of a midrail when the crossing point of two braces is between 20 inches 0.5 meters and 30 inches 0.8 meters above the work platform, or as a top rail when the crossing point of two braces is between 38 inches 0.97 meters and 48 inches 1.3 meters above the work platform. The end points at each upright shall be no more than 48 inches 1.3 meters apart. 1926.451 H. Falling object protection. 1926.451 H1 In addition to wearing hard hats, each employee on a scaffold shall be provided with additional protection from falling hand tools, debris, and other small objects through the installation of toe boards, screens, or guardrail systems, or through the erection of debris nets, catch platforms, or canopy structures that contain or deflect the falling objects. When the falling objects are too large, heavy, or massive to be contained or deflected by any of the above listed measures, the employer shall place such potential falling objects away from the edge of the surface from which they could fall and shall secure those materials as necessary to prevent their falling. 1926.451 H2 Where there is a danger of tools, materials, or equipment falling from a scaffold and striking employees below, the following provisions apply. 1926.451 H2I through 1926.451 H2V. The area below the scaffold to which objects can fall shall be barricaded, and employees shall not be permitted to enter the hazard area, or a toe board shall be erected along the edge of platforms more than 10 feet 3.1 meters above lower levels for a distance sufficient to protect employees below, except on float, ship, scaffolds where an edging of 3/4 by 1/2 inch 2 by 4 centimeters, wood or equivalent may be used in lieu of toe boards, where tools, materials, or equipment are piled to a height higher than the top edge of the toe board, paneling or screening extending from the toe board or platform to the top of the guardrail shall be erected for a distance sufficient to protect employees below, or a guardrail system shall be installed with openings small enough to prevent passage of potential falling objects, or a canopy structure, debris net, or catch platform strong enough to withstand the impact forces of the potential falling objects shall be erected over the employees below. 1926.451 H3 Canopies, when used for falling object protection, shall comply with the following criteria. 1926.451, H3, I, through 1926.451, H3, 3, canopies shall be installed between the falling object hazard and the employees. When canopies are used on suspension scaffolds for falling object protection, the scaffold shall be equipped with additional independent support lines equal in number to the number of points supported, and equivalent in strength to the strength of the suspension ropes. Independent support lines and suspension ropes shall not be attached to the same points of anchorage. 1926.451, H4, where used, toe boards shall be 1926.451, H4, I, capable of withstanding, without failure, a force of at least 50 pounds, 222 N, applied in any downward or horizontal direction at any point along the toe board. Toe boards built in accordance with Appendix A to this subpart will be deemed to meet this requirement. And 1926.451, H4, 2, at least 3 1/2 inches, 9 centimeters, high from the top edge of the toe board to the level of the walking/working surface. Toe boards shall be securely fastened in place at the outermost edge of the platform and have not more than a 1/4 inch, 0.7 centimeters, clearance above the walking/working surface. Toe boards shall be solid or with openings not over 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters, in the greatest dimension. OSHA 1926.452. Additional requirements applicable to specific types of scaffolds. In addition to the applicable requirements of 1926.451, the following requirements apply to the specific types of scaffolds indicated. Scaffolds not specifically addressed by 1926.452, such as but not limited to systems scaffolds, must meet the requirements of 1926.451. 1926.452, A. Pole scaffolds. 1926.452, A1. When platforms are being moved to the next level, the existing platform shall be left undisturbed until the new bearers have been set in place and braced, prior to receiving the new platforms. 1926.452, A2. Cross-bracing shall be installed between the inner and outer sets of poles on double pole scaffolds. 1926.452, A3. Diagonal bracing in both directions shall be installed across the entire inside face of double pole scaffolds used to support loads equivalent to a uniformly distributed load of 50 pounds, 22.7 kilograms, or more per square foot, 929 square cm. 1926.452, A4. Diagonal bracing in both directions shall be installed across the entire outside face of all double and single pole scaffolds. 1926.452, A5. Runners and bearers shall be installed on edge. 1926.452, A6. Bearers shall extend a minimum of 3 inches, 7.6 centimeters, over the outside edges of runners. 1926.452, A7. Runners shall extend over a minimum of 2 poles, and shall be supported by bearing blocks securely attached to the poles. 1926.452, A8. Braces, bearers, and runners shall not be spliced between poles. 1926.452, A9. Where wooden poles are spliced, the ends shall be squared and the upper section shall rest squarely on the lower section. Wood splice plates shall be provided on at least 2 adjacent sides, and shall extend at least 2 feet 0.6 meters on either side of the splice, overlap the abutted ends equally, and have at least the same cross-sectional areas as the pole. Splice plates of other materials of equivalent strength may be used. 1926.452, A10. Pole scaffolds over 60 feet in height shall be designed by a registered professional engineer, and shall be constructed and loaded in accordance with that design. Non-mandatory Appendix A to this subpart contains examples of criteria that will enable an employer to comply with design and loading requirements for pole scaffolds under 60 feet in height. 1926.452, B. Tube and coupler scaffolds. 1926.452, B1. When platforms are being moved to the next level, the existing platform shall be left undisturbed until the new bearers have been set in place and braced prior to receiving the new platforms. 1926.452, B2. Transverse bracing forming an X across the width of the scaffold shall be installed at the scaffold ends and at least at every third set of posts horizontally, measured from only one end, and every fourth runner vertically. Bracing shall extend diagonally from the inner or outer posts or runners upward to the next outer or inner posts or runners. Building ties shall be installed at the bearer levels between the transverse bracing and shall conform to the requirements of 1926.451 C1. 1926.452 B3. On straight-run scaffolds, longitudinal bracing across the inner and outer rows of posts shall be installed diagonally in both directions, and shall extend from the base of the end posts upward to the top of the scaffold at approximately a 45-degree angle. On scaffolds whose length is greater than their height, such bracing shall be repeated beginning at least at every fifth post. On scaffolds whose length is less than their height, such bracing shall be installed from the base of the end posts upward to the opposite end posts, and then in alternating directions until reaching the top of the scaffold. Bracing shall be installed as close as possible to the intersection of the bearer and post or runner and post. 1926.452 B4. Where conditions preclude the attachment of bracing to posts, bracing shall be attached to the runners as close to the post as possible. 1926.452 B5. Bearers shall be installed transversely between posts, and when coupled to the posts, shall have the inboard coupler bear directly on the runner coupler. When the bearers are coupled to the runners, the couplers shall be as close to the posts as possible. 1926.452 B6. Bearers shall extend beyond the posts and runners, and shall provide full contact with the coupler. 1926.452 B7. Runners shall be installed along the length of the scaffold, L, located on both the inside and outside posts at level heights. When tube and coupler guardrails and midrails are used on outside posts, they may be used in lieu of outside runners. 1926.452 B8. Runners shall be interlocked on straight runs to form continuous lengths, and shall be coupled to each post. The bottom runners and bearers shall be located as close to the base as possible. 1926.452 B9. Couplers shall be of a structural metal, such as drop-forged steel, malleable iron, or structural-grade aluminum. The use of gray cast iron is prohibited. 1926.452 B10. Tube and coupler scaffolds over 125 feet in height shall be designed by a registered professional engineer, and shall be constructed and loaded in accordance with such design. Non-mandatory Appendix A to this subpart contains examples of criteria that will enable an employer to comply with design and loading requirements for tube and coupler scaffolds under 125 feet in height. 1926.452 C. Fabricated frame scaffolds, tubular welded frame scaffolds. 1926.452 C1. When moving platforms to the next level, the existing platform shall be left undisturbed until the new end frames have been set in place and braced prior to receiving the new platforms. 1926.452 C2. Frames and panels shall be braced by cross, horizontal, or diagonal braces, or combination thereof, which secure vertical members together laterally. The cross braces shall be of such length as will automatically square and align vertical members so that the erected scaffold is always plumb, level, and square. All brace connections shall be secured. 1926.452 C3. Frames and panels shall be joined together vertically by coupling or stacking pins or equivalent means. 1926.452 C4. Where uplift can occur which would displace scaffold end frames or panels, the frames or panels shall be locked together vertically by pins or equivalent means. 1926.452 C5. Brackets used to support cantilevered loads shall. 1926.452 C5 I through 1926.452 C5 3. Be seated with side brackets parallel to the frames and end brackets at 90 degrees to the frames, not be bent or twisted from these positions, and be used only to support personnel, unless the scaffold has been designed for other loads by a qualified engineer and built to withstand the tipping forces caused by those other loads being placed on the bracket-supported section of the scaffold. 1926.452 C6. Scaffolds over 125 feet 38.0 meters in height above their baseplates shall be designed by a registered professional engineer, and shall be constructed and loaded in accordance with such design. 1926.452 D. Plasterers, decorators, and large area scaffolds. Scaffolds shall be constructed in accordance with paragraphs A, B, or C of this section as appropriate. 1926.452 E. Bricklayers square scaffolds, squares. 1926.452 E1. Scaffolds made of wood shall be reinforced with gussets on both sides of each corner. 1926.452 E2. Diagonal braces shall be installed on all sides of each square. 1926.452 E3. Diagonal braces shall be installed between squares on the rear and front sides of the scaffold, and shall extend from the bottom of each square to the top of the next square. 1926.452 E4. Scaffolds shall not exceed 3 tiers in height, and shall be so constructed and arranged that one square rests directly above the other. The upper tiers shall stand on a continuous row of planks laid across the next lower tier, and shall be nailed down or otherwise secured to prevent displacement. 1926.452 F. Horse scaffolds. 1926.452 F1. Scaffold shall not be constructed or arranged more than 2 tiers or 10 feet, 3.0 meters in height, whichever is less. 1926.452 F2. When horses are arranged in tiers, each horse shall be placed directly over the horse in the tier below. 1926.452 F3. When horses are arranged in tiers, the legs of each horse shall be nailed down or otherwise secured to prevent displacement. 1926.452 F4. When horses are arranged in tiers, each tier shall be cross-braced. 1926.452 G. Form scaffolds and carpenter's bracket scaffolds. 1926.452 G1. Each bracket, except those for wooden bracket form scaffolds, shall be attached to the supporting formwork or structure by means of one or more of the following: nails, a metal stud attachment device, welding, hooking over a secured structural supporting member, with the form rails either bolted to the form or secured by snap ties or tie bolts extending through the form and securely anchored, or, for carpenter's bracket scaffolds only, by a bolt extending through to the opposite side of the structure's wall. 1926.452 G2. Wooden bracket form scaffolds shall be an integral part of the form panel. 1926.452 G3. Folding type metal brackets, when extended for use, shall be either bolted or secured with a locking type pin. 1926.452 H. Roof bracket scaffolds. 1926.452 H1. Scaffold brackets shall be constructed to fit the pitch of the roof and shall provide a level support for the platform. 1926.452 H2. Brackets, including those provided with pointed metal projections, shall be anchored in place by nails unless it is impractical to use nails. When nails are not used, brackets shall be secured in place with first-grade manila rope of at least 3/4 inch, 1.9 centimeters, diameter, or equivalent. 1926.452 I. Outrigger scaffolds. 1926.452 I1 through 1926.452 I8. The inboard end of outrigger beams, measured from the fulcrum point to the extreme point of anchorage, shall be not less than 1 1/2 times the outboard end in length. Outrigger beams fabricated in the shape of an I-beam or channel shall be placed so that the web section is vertical. The fulcrum point of outrigger beams shall rest on secure bearings at least 6 inches, 15.2 centimeters, in each horizontal dimension. Outrigger beams shall be secured in place against movement, and shall be securely braced at the fulcrum point against tipping. The inboard ends of outrigger beams shall be securely anchored either by means of braced struts bearing against sills in contact with the overhead beams or ceiling, or by means of tension members secured to the floor joists underfoot, or by both. The entire supporting structure shall be securely braced to prevent any horizontal movement. To prevent their displacement, platform units shall be nailed, bolted, or otherwise secured to outriggers. Scaffolds and scaffold components shall be designed by a registered professional engineer and shall be constructed and loaded in accordance with such design. 1926.452 J. Pump jack scaffolds. 1926.452 J1 through 1926.452 J7. Pump jack brackets, braces, and accessories shall be fabricated from metal plates and angles. Each pump jack bracket shall have 2 positive gripping mechanisms to prevent any failure or slippage. Poles shall be secured to the structure by rigid triangular bracing or equivalent at the bottom, top, and other points as necessary. When the pump jack has to pass bracing already installed, an additional brace shall be installed approximately 4 feet (1.2 meters) above the brace to be passed, and shall be left in place until the pump jack has been moved and the original brace reinstalled. When guardrails are used for fall protection, a workbench may be used as the top rail only if it meets all the requirements in paragraphs G, 4, 2, 7, 8, and 13 of 1926.451. Workbenches shall not be used as scaffold platforms. When poles are made of wood, the pole lumber shall be straight-grained, free of shakes, large loose or dead knots, and other defects which might impair strength. When wood poles are constructed of 2 continuous lengths, they shall be joined together with the seam parallel to the bracket. When 2x4s are spliced to make a pole, mending plates shall be installed at all splices to develop the full strength of the member. 1926.452 K. Ladder jack scaffolds. 1926.452 K1 through 1926.452 K5 platforms shall not exceed a height of 20 feet (6.1 meters). All ladders used to support ladder jack scaffolds shall meet the requirements of Subpart X of this part. Stairways and ladders, except that job-made ladders shall not be used to support ladder jack scaffolds. The ladder jack shall be so designed and constructed that it will bear on the side rails and ladder rungs or on the ladder rungs alone. If bearing on rungs only, the bearing area shall include a length of at least 10 inches (25.4 centimeters) on each rung. Ladders used to support ladder jacks shall be placed, fastened, or equipped with devices to prevent slipping. Scaffold platforms shall not be bridged one to another. 1926.452 L. Window jack scaffolds. 1926.452 L1 through 1926.452 L3 scaffolds shall be securely attached to the window opening. Scaffolds shall be used only for the purpose of working at the window opening through which the jack is placed. Window jack shall not be used to support planks placed between one window jack and another, or for other elements of scaffolding. 1926.452 M. Crawling boards, chicken ladders. 1926.452 M1. Crawling boards shall extend from the roof peak to the eaves when used in connection with roof construction, repair, or maintenance. 1926.452 M2. Crawling boards shall be secured to the roof by ridge hooks or by means that meet equivalent criteria, e.g., strength and durability. 1926.452 N. Step, platform, and trestle ladder scaffolds. 1926.452 N1 through 1926.452 N4 scaffold platforms shall not be placed any higher than the second highest rung or step of the ladder supporting the platform. All ladders used in conjunction with step, platform, and trestle ladder scaffolds shall meet the pertinent requirements of Subpart X of this part. Stairways and ladders, except that job-made ladders shall not be used to support such scaffolds. Ladders used to support step, platform, and trestle ladder scaffolds shall be placed, fastened, or equipped with devices to prevent slipping. Scaffolds shall not be bridged one to another. 1926.452 O. Single-point adjustable suspension scaffolds. 1926.452 O1. When 2 single-point adjustable suspension scaffolds are combined to form a 2-point adjustable suspension scaffold, the resulting 2-point scaffold shall comply with the requirements for 2-point adjustable suspension scaffolds in paragraph P of this section. 1926.452 O2. The supporting rope between the scaffold and the suspension device shall be kept vertical unless all of the following conditions are met. 1926.452 O2 I through 1926.452 O2 4. The rigging has been designed by a qualified person, and the scaffold is accessible to rescuers, and the supporting rope is protected to ensure that it will not chafe at any point where a change in direction occurs, and the scaffold is positioned so that swinging cannot bring the scaffold into contact with another surface. 1926.452 O3. Bosun's chair tackle shall consist of correct size ball bearings or bushed blocks containing safety hooks and properly I-spliced minimum 5/8 inch 1.6 centimeters diameter first-grade manila rope or other rope which will satisfy the criteria, e.g., strength and durability, of manila rope. 1926.452.04 Bosun's chair seat slings shall be reeved through 4 corner holes in the seat, shall cross each other on the underside of the seat, and shall be rigged so as to prevent slippage which could cause an out-of-level condition. 1926.452.05 Bosun's chair seat slings shall be a minimum of 5/8 inch 1.6 centimeters diameter fiber, synthetic, or other rope which will satisfy the criteria, e.g., strength, slip resistance, durability, etc. of first-grade manila rope. 1926.452.06 When a heat-producing process such as gas or arc welding is being conducted, Bosun's chair seat slings shall be a minimum of 3/8 inch 1 centimeter wire rope. 1926.452.07 Non-cross-laminated wood Bosun's chairs shall be reinforced on their underside by cleats securely fastened to prevent the board from splitting. 1926.452.p 2-point adjustable suspension scaffolds, swing stages. The following requirements do not apply to 2-point adjustable suspension scaffolds used as masons or stonesetters scaffolds. Such scaffolds are covered by paragraph Q of this section. 1926.452.p1 through 1926.452.p6 Platforms shall not be more than 36 inches (0.9 meters) wide unless designed by a qualified person to prevent unstable conditions. The platform shall be securely fastened to hangers, stirrups, by U-bolts or by other means which satisfy the requirements of 1926.451a. The blocks for fiber or synthetic ropes shall consist of at least one double and one single block. The sheaves of all blocks shall fit the size of the rope used. Platforms shall be of the ladder type, plank type, beam type, or light metal type. Light metal type platforms having a rated capacity of 750 pounds or less, and platforms 40 feet (12.2 meters) or less in length shall be tested and listed by a nationally recognized testing laboratory. 2-point scaffolds shall not be bridged or otherwise connected one to another during raising and lowering operations unless the bridge connections are articulated, attached, and the hoists properly sized. Passage may be made from one platform to another only when the platforms are at the same height, are abutting, and walk-through stirrups specifically designed for this purpose are used. 1926.452 Multi-point adjustable suspension scaffolds, stonesetters multi-point adjustable suspension scaffolds, and masons multi-point adjustable suspension scaffolds. 1926.452 Q1 through 1926.452 Q3 When 2 or more scaffolds are used, they shall not be bridged one to another unless they are designed to be bridged. The bridge connections are articulated, and the hoists are properly sized. If bridges are not used, passage may be made from one platform to another only when the platforms are at the same height and are abutting. Scaffolds shall be suspended from metal outriggers, brackets, wire rope slings, hooks, or means that meet equivalent criteria, e.g., strength, durability. 1926.452 R. Catenary scaffolds. 1926.452 R1 through 1926.452 R4 No more than one platform shall be placed between consecutive vertical pickups, and no more than 2 platforms shall be used on a catenary scaffold. Platforms supported by wire ropes shall have hook-shaped stops on each end of the platforms to prevent them from slipping off the wire ropes. These hooks shall be so placed that they will prevent the platform from falling if one of the horizontal wire ropes breaks. Wire ropes shall not be tightened to the extent that the application of a scaffold load will overstress them. Wire ropes shall be continuous and without splices between anchors. 1926.452 S. Float, ship, scaffolds. 1926.452 S1 The platform shall be supported by a minimum of 2 bearers, each of which shall project a minimum of 6 inches (15.2 centimeters) beyond the platform on both sides. Each bearer shall be securely fastened to the platform. 1926.452 S2 Rope connections shall be such that the platform cannot shift or slip. 1926.452, S3, when only 2 ropes are used with each float. 1926.452, S3, I, they shall be arranged so as to provide 4 ends which are securely fastened to overhead supports. 1926.452, S3, 2, each supporting rope shall be hitched around one end of the bearer and pass under the platform to the other end of the bearer where it is hitched again, leaving sufficient rope at each end for the supporting ties. 1926.452, T, interior hung scaffolds. 1926.452, T1, through 1926.452, T3. Scaffolds shall be suspended only from the roof structure or other structural member such as ceiling beams. Overhead supporting members, roof structure, ceiling beams, or other structural members shall be inspected and checked for strength before the scaffold is erected. Suspension ropes and cables shall be connected to the overhead supporting members by shackles, clips, thimbles, or other means that meet equivalent criteria, e.g., strength, durability. 1926.452, U. Needle beam scaffolds. 1926.452, U1, through 1926.452, U5. Scaffold support beams shall be installed on edge. Ropes or hangers shall be used for supports, except that one end of a needle beam scaffold may be supported by a permanent structural member. The ropes shall be securely attached to the needle beams. The support connection shall be arranged so as to prevent the needle beam from rolling or becoming displaced. Platform units shall be securely attached to the needle beams by bolts or equivalent means. Cleats and overhang are not considered to be adequate means of attachment. 1926.452, V. Multi-level suspended scaffolds. 1926.452, V1, through 1926.452, V3, scaffolds shall be equipped with additional independent support lines, equal in number to the number of points supported, and of equivalent strength to the suspension ropes, and rigged to support the scaffold in the event the suspension ropes fail. Independent support lines and suspension ropes shall not be attached to the same points of anchorage. Supports for platforms shall be attached directly to the support stirrup and not to any other platform. 1926.452, W. Mobile scaffolds. 1926.452, W1, scaffolds shall be braced by cross, horizontal, or diagonal braces, or combination thereof, to prevent racking or collapse of the scaffold and to secure vertical members together laterally so as to automatically square and align the vertical members. Scaffolds shall be plumb, level, and squared. All brace connections shall be secured. 1926.452, W1I. Scaffolds constructed of tube and coupler components shall also comply with the requirements of paragraph B of this section. 1926.452, W1-2, scaffolds constructed of fabricated frame components shall also comply with the requirements of paragraph C of this section. 1926.452, W2, scaffold casters and wheels shall be locked with positive wheel and or wheel and swivel locks, or equivalent means, to prevent movement of the scaffold while the scaffold is used in a stationary manner. 1926.452, W3, manual force used to move the scaffold shall be applied as close to the base as practicable, but not more than 5 feet (1.5 meters) above the supporting surface. 1926.452, W4, power systems used to propel mobile scaffolds shall be designed for such use. Forklifts, trucks, similar motor vehicles, or add-on motors shall not be used to propel scaffolds unless the scaffold is designed for such propulsion systems. 1926.452, W5, scaffolds shall be stabilized to prevent tipping during movement. 1926.452, W6, employees shall not be allowed to ride on scaffolds unless the following conditions exist. 1926.452, W6I, through 1926.452, W6V, the surface on which the scaffold is being moved is within 3 degrees of level, and free of pits, holes, and obstructions. The height to base width ratio of the scaffold during movement is 2 to 1 or less. Unless the scaffold is designed and constructed to meet or exceed nationally recognized stability test requirements such as those listed in paragraph 2(w) of Appendix A to this subpart. Outrigger frames, when used, are installed on both sides of the scaffold. When power systems are used, the propelling force is applied directly to the wheels and does not produce a speed in excess of 1 foot per second, 0.3 mph, and no employee is on any part of the scaffold which extends outward beyond the wheels, casters, or other supports. 1926.452 W7 Platforms shall not extend outward beyond the base supports of the scaffold unless outrigger frames or equivalent devices are used to ensure stability. 1926.452 W8 Where leveling of the scaffold is necessary, screw jacks or equivalent means shall be used. 1926.452 W9 Caster stems and wheel stems shall be pinned or otherwise secured in scaffold legs or adjustment screws. 1926.452 W10 Before a scaffold is moved, each employee on the scaffold shall be made aware of the move. 1926.452 X Repair bracket scaffolds. 1926.452 X1 Brackets shall be secured in place by at least one wire rope at least half an inch, 1.27 centimeters, in diameter. 1926.452 X2 Each bracket shall be attached to the securing wire rope, or ropes, by a positive locking device capable of preventing the unintentional detachment of the bracket from the rope, or by equivalent means. 1926.452 X3 Each bracket, at the contact point between the supporting structure and the bottom of the bracket, shall be provided with a shoe, heel block or foot, capable of preventing the lateral movement of the bracket. 1926.452 X4 Platforms shall be secured to the brackets in a manner that will prevent the separation of the platforms from the brackets and the movement of the platforms or the brackets on a completed scaffold. 1926.452 X5 When a wire rope is placed around the structure in order to provide a safe anchorage for personal fall arrest systems used by employees erecting or dismantling scaffolds, the wire rope shall meet the requirements of Subpart M of this part, but shall be at least 5/16 inch, 0.8 centimeters, in diameter. 1926.452 X6 Each wire rope used for securing brackets in place or as an anchorage for personal fall arrest systems shall be protected from damage due to contact with edges, corners, protrusions, or other discontinuities of the supporting structure or scaffold components. 1926.452 X7 Tensioning of each wire rope used for securing brackets in place or as an anchorage for personal fall arrest systems shall be by means of a turnbuckle at least 1 inch, 2.54 centimeters, in diameter, or by equivalent means. 1926.452 X8 Each turnbuckle shall be connected to the other end of its rope by use of an eye-splice thimble of a size appropriate to the turnbuckle to which it is attached. 1926.452 X9 U-bolt wire rope clips shall not be used on any wire rope used to secure brackets or to serve as an anchor for personal fall arrest systems. 1926.452 X10 The employer shall ensure that material shall not be dropped to the outside of the supporting structure. 1926.452 X11 Scaffold erection shall progress in only one direction around any structure. 1926.452 Y Stilts. Stilts, when used, shall be used in accordance with the following requirements. 1926.452 Y1 through 1926.452 Y4. An employee may wear stilts on a scaffold only if it is a large area scaffold. When an employee is using stilts on a large area scaffold where a guardrail system is used to provide fall protection, the guardrail system shall be increased in height by an amount equal to the height of the stilts being used by the employee. Surfaces on which stilts are used shall be flat and free of pits, holes and obstructions, such as debris, as well as other tripping and falling hazards. Stilts shall be properly maintained. Any alteration of the original equipment shall be approved by the manufacturer. 1926.453 Aerial lifts. 1926.453 A. General requirements. 1926.453 A. 1. Unless otherwise provided in this section, aerial lifts acquired for use on or after January 22, 1973 shall be designed and constructed in conformance with the applicable requirements of the American National Standards for Vehicle-Mounted Elevating and Rotating Work Platforms, ANSI A 92.2-1969, including Appendix. Aerial lifts acquired before January 22, 1973 which do not meet the requirements of ANSI A 92.2-1969, may not be used after January 1, 1976, unless they shall have been modified so as to conform with the applicable design and construction requirements of ANSI A 92.2-1969. Aerial lifts include the following types of vehicle-mounted aerial devices used to elevate personnel to job sites above ground. 1926.453, A1, I, through 1926.453, A1, V. Extensible boom platforms, aerial ladders, articulating boom platforms, vertical towers, and a combination of any such devices. Aerial equipment may be made of metal, wood, fiberglass, reinforced plastic, FRP, or other material, may be powered or manually operated, and are deemed to be aerial lifts whether or not they are capable of rotating about a substantially vertical axis. 1926.453, A2, aerial lifts may be field modified for uses other than those intended by the manufacturer provided the modification has been certified in writing by the manufacturer or by any other equivalent entity, such as a nationally recognized testing laboratory, to be in conformity with all applicable provisions of ANSI A 92.2-1969 and this section and to be at least as safe as the equipment was before modification. 1926.453, B. Specific requirements. 1926.453, B1, ladder trucks and tower trucks. Aerial ladders shall be secured in the lower traveling position by the locking device on top of the truck cab, and the manually operated device at the base of the ladder before the truck is moved for highway travel. 1926.453, B2, extensible and articulating boom platforms. 1926.453, B2, I, through 1926.453, B2, 12. Lift controls shall be tested each day prior to use to determine that such controls are in safe working condition. Only authorized persons shall operate an aerial lift. Belting off to an adjacent pole, structure, or equipment while working from an aerial lift shall not be permitted. Employees shall always stand firmly on the floor of the basket, and shall not sit or climb on the edge of the basket or use planks, ladders, or other devices for a work position. A body belt shall be worn and a lanyard attached to the boom or basket when working from an aerial lift. Note to paragraph B2V as of January 1, 1998, Subpart M of this part, 1926.502 D, provides that body belts are not acceptable as part of a personal fall arrest system. The use of a body belt in a tethering system or in a restraint system is acceptable and is regulated under 1926.502 E. Boom and basket load limits specified by the manufacturer shall not be exceeded. The brakes shall be set, and when outriggers are used, they shall be positioned on pads or a solid surface. Wheel chock shall be installed before using an aerial lift on an incline, provided they can be safely installed. An aerial lift truck shall not be moved when the boom is elevated in a working position with men in the basket, except for equipment which is specifically designed for this type of operation in accordance with the provisions of paragraphs A1 and 2 of this section. Articulating boom and extensible boom platforms, primarily designed as personnel carriers, shall have both platform, upper, and lower controls. Upper controls shall be in or beside the platform within easy reach of the operator. Lower controls shall provide for overriding the upper controls. Controls shall be plainly marked as to their function. Lower level controls shall not be operated unless permission has been obtained from the employee in the lift, except in case of emergency. Climbers shall not be worn while performing work from an aerial lift. The insulated portion of an aerial lift shall not be altered in any manner that might reduce its insulating value. Before moving an aerial lift for travel, the boom shall be inspected to see that it is properly cradled and outriggers are in stowed position except as provided in paragraph B2(8) of this section. 1926.453 B3 Electrical tests. All electrical tests shall conform to the requirements of ANSI A 92.2-1969 Section 5. However, equivalent D-to-C voltage tests may be used in lieu of the ASC voltage specified in a 92.2-1969 DC. Voltage tests which are approved by the equipment manufacturer or equivalent entity shall be considered an equivalent test for the purpose of this paragraph. B3. 1926.453 B4 Bursting Safety Factor. The provisions of the American National Standards Institute Standard ANSI A 92.2-1969, Section 4.9 Bursting Safety Factor shall apply to all critical hydraulic and pneumatic components. Critical components are those in which a failure would result in a free fall or free rotation of the boom. All non-critical components shall have a bursting safety factor of at least 2 to 1. 1926.453 B5 Welding Standards. All welding shall conform to the following standards as applicable. 1926.453 B5 I through 1926.453 B5 4 Standard Qualification Procedure AWS B3.0-41. Recommended Practices for Automotive Welding Design AWS D8.4-61. Standard Qualification of Welding Procedures and Welders for Piping and Tubing AWS D10.9-69. Specifications for Welding Highway and Railway Bridges AWS D2.0-69. Note to 1926.453. Non-mandatory Appendix C to this subpart lists examples of national consensus standards that are considered to provide employee protection equivalent to that provided through the application of ANSI A 92.2-1969, where appropriate. This incorporation by reference was approved by the Director of the Federal Register in accordance with 5 U.S.C. 552, and 1 CFR Part 51. Copies may be obtained from the American National Standards Institute. Copies may be inspected at the Docket Office, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, U.S. Department of Labor, 200 Constitution Avenue, NW, Room N2634, Washington, D.C. or at the Office of the Federal Register, 800 North Capitol Street, NW, Suite 700, Washington, D.C. 1926.454 Training Requirements. This section supplements and clarifies the requirements of Section 1926.21, B2, as these relate to the hazards of work on scaffolds. 1926.454, A. The employer shall have each employee who performs work while on a scaffold trained by a person qualified in the subject matter to recognize the hazards associated with the type of scaffold being used and to understand the procedures to control or minimize those hazards. The training shall include the following areas, as applicable. 1926.454, A1, through 1926.454, A5. The nature of any electrical hazards, fall hazards, and falling object hazards in the work area. The correct procedures for dealing with electrical hazards and for erecting, maintaining, and disassembling the fall protection systems and falling object protection systems being used. The proper use of the scaffold, and the proper handling of materials on the scaffold. The maximum intended load and the load-carrying capacities of the scaffolds used, and any other pertinent requirements of this subpart. 1926.454, B. The employer shall have each employee who is involved in erecting, disassembling, moving, operating, repairing, maintaining, or inspecting a scaffold trained by a competent person to recognize any hazards associated with the work in question. The training shall include the following topics, as applicable. 1926.454, B1, through 1926.454, B4. The nature of scaffold hazards, the correct procedures for erecting, disassembling, moving, operating, repairing, inspecting, and maintaining the type of scaffold in question. The design criteria, maximum intended load-carrying capacity, and intended use of the scaffold. Any other pertinent requirements of this subpart. 1926.454, C. When the employer has reason to believe that an employee lacks the skill or understanding needed for safe work involving the erection, use, or dismantling of scaffolds, the employer shall retrain each such employee so that the requisite proficiency is regained. Retraining is required in at least the following situations. 1926.454 C1 through 1926.454 C3, where changes at the worksite present a hazard about which an employee has not been previously trained, or where changes in the types of scaffolds, fall protection, falling object protection, or other equipment present a hazard about which an employee has not been previously trained, or where inadequacies in an affected employee's work involving scaffolds indicate that the employee has not retained the requisite proficiency. Appendix A. Scaffold Specifications. This appendix provides non-mandatory guidelines to assist employers in complying with the requirements of Subpart L of this part. An employer may use these guidelines and tables as a starting point for designing scaffold systems. However, the guidelines do not provide all the information necessary to build a complete system, and the employer is still responsible for designing and assembling these components in such a way that the completed system will meet the requirements of 1926.451a. Scaffold components which are not selected and loaded in accordance with this appendix, and components for which no specific guidelines or tables are given in this appendix, e.g., joints, ties, components for wood pole scaffolds more than 60 feet in height, components for heavy-duty horse scaffolds, components made with other materials, and components with other dimensions, etc. must be designed and constructed in accordance with the capacity requirements of 1926.451a. and loaded in accordance with 1926.451 D1. Indexed to Appendix A for Subpart L, A through Z. 1. General Guidelines and Tables. 2. Specific Guidelines and Tables. A. Pole scaffolds. Single pole wood pole scaffolds. Independent wood pole scaffolds. B. Tube and coupler scaffolds. C. Fabricated frame scaffolds. D. Plasterers, decorators, and large area scaffolds. E. Bricklayers square scaffolds. F. Horse scaffolds. G. Form scaffolds and carpenter's bracket scaffolds. H. Roof bracket scaffolds. I. Outrigger scaffolds, one level. J. Pump jack scaffolds. K. Ladder jack scaffolds. L. Window jack scaffolds. M. Crawling boards, chicken ladders. N. Step, platform and trestle ladder scaffolds. O. Single-point adjustable suspension scaffolds. P. Two-point adjustable suspension scaffolds. Q. 1. Stonesetters multi-point adjustable suspension scaffolds. Q. 2. Masons multi-point adjustable suspension scaffolds. R. Catenary scaffolds. S. Float, ship, scaffolds. T. Interior hung scaffolds. U. Needle beam scaffolds. V. Multi-level suspension scaffolds. W. Mobile scaffolds. X. Repair bracket scaffolds. Y. Stilts. Z. Tank builders scaffolds. 1. General Guidelines and Tables. The following tables, and the tables in Part 2 specific guidelines and tables, assume that all load-carrying timber members, except planks, of the scaffold are a minimum of 1,500 lbf/in. 2. Stress grade, construction grade lumber. All dimensions are nominal sizes as provided in the American Softwood Lumber Standards, dated January 1970, except that, where rough sizes are noted, only rough or undressed lumber of the size specified will satisfy minimum requirements. B. Solid sawn wood used as scaffold planks shall be selected for such use following the grading rules established by a recognized lumber grading association or by an independent lumber grading inspection agency. Such planks shall be identified by the grade stamp of such association or agency. The association or agency and the grading rules under which the wood is graded shall be certified by the Board of Review, American Lumber Standard Committee, as set forth in the American Softwood Lumber Standard of the U.S. Department of Commerce. Allowable spans shall be determined in compliance with the National Design Specification for Wood Construction published by the National Forest Products Association, Paragraph 5 of ANSI A10.8-1988 Scaffolding Safety Requirements published by the American National Standards Institute, or for 2 by 10 inch, nominal, or 2 by 9 inch, rough, solid sawn wood planks, as shown in the following table. When the maximum intended load is 25 pounds per square inch, the maximum permissible span using full thickness undressed lumber is 10 feet. and the maximum permissible span using nominal thickness lumber is 6 feet. When the maximum intended load is 50 pounds per square inch, the maximum permissible span using full thickness undressed lumber is 8 feet, and the maximum permissible span using nominal thickness lumber is 6 feet. When the maximum intended load is 75 pounds per square inch, the maximum permissible span using full thickness undressed lumber is 6 feet. 2. The maximum permissible span for 1 1/4 x 9 inch or wider wood plank of full thickness with a maximum intended load of 50 pounds per feet, 2, shall be 4 feet. C. Fabricated planks and platforms may be used in lieu of solid sawn wood planks. Maximum spans for such units shall be as recommended by the manufacturer based on the maximum intended load being calculated as follows. When the rated load capacity is light duty, the intended load is 25 pounds per square foot, applied uniformly over the entire span area. When the rated load capacity is medium duty, the intended load is 50 pounds per square foot, applied uniformly over the entire span area. When the rated load capacity is heavy duty, the intended load is 75 pounds per square foot applied uniformly over the entire span area. When the rated load capacity is 1 person, the intended load is 250 pounds placed at the center of the span, total 250 pounds. When the rated load capacity is 2 person, the intended load is 250 pounds placed 18 inches to the left and right of the span, total 500 pounds. When the rated load capacity is 3 person, the intended load is 250 pounds placed at the center of the span and 250 pounds placed 18 inches to the left and right of the span, total 750 pounds. Note: platform units used to make scaffold platforms intended for light-duty use shall be capable of supporting at least 25 pounds per square foot applied uniformly over the entire unit span area, or a 250-pound point load placed on the unit at the center of the span, whichever load produces the greater shear force. D. Guardrails shall be as follows. I. Top rail shall be equivalent in strength to 2 inch by 4 inch lumber, or 1 1/4 inch x 1/8 inch structural angle iron, or 1 inch x 0.070 inch wall steel tubing, or 1.990 inch x 0.058 inch wall aluminum tubing. 2. Mid-rails shall be equivalent in strength to 1 inch by 6 inch lumber, or 1 1/4 inch x 1 1/4 inch x 1/8 inch structural angle iron, or 1 inch x 0.070 inch wall steel tubing, or 1.990 inch x 0.058 inch wall aluminum tubing. 3. Toe boards shall be equivalent in strength to 1 inch by 4 inch lumber, or 1 1/4 inch x 1 1/4 inch structural angle iron, or 1 inch x 0.070 inch wall steel tubing, or 1.990 inch x 0.058 inch wall aluminum tubing. 4. Posts shall be equivalent in strength to 2 inch by 4 inch lumber, or 1 1/4 inch x 1 1/4 inch x 1/8 structural angle iron, or 1 inch x 0.070 inch wall steel tubing, or 1.990 inch x 0.058 inch wall aluminum tubing. V. Distance between posts shall not exceed 8 feet. E. Overhead protection shall consist of 2 inch nominal planking laid tight, or 3/4 inch plywood. F. Screen installed between toe boards and mid-rails or top rails shall consist of no 18 gauge US standard wire 1 inch mesh. 2. Specific guidelines and tables. A. Pole scaffolds, see table on Appendix A. B. Tube and coupler scaffolds. C. Fabricated frame scaffolds. Because of their prefabricated nature, no additional guidelines or tables for these scaffolds are being adopted in this appendix. D. Plasterers, decorators, and large area scaffolds. The guidelines for pole scaffolds or tube and coupler scaffolds, Appendix A, and B, may be applied. E. Bricklayers square scaffolds. Maximum intended load, 50 pounds per ft, 2. The squares shall be set not more than 8 feet apart for light-duty scaffolds and not more than 5 feet apart for medium-duty scaffolds. F. Horse scaffolds. Maximum intended load, light-duty 25 pounds per feet, 2. Horses shall be spaced not more than 8 feet apart for light-duty loads, and not more than 5 feet apart for medium-duty loads. Horizontal members or bearers, light-duty, 2 by 4 inches. Medium-duty, 3 by 4 inches. Legs, 2 by 4 inches. Longitudinal brace between legs, 1 by 6 inches. Gusset brace at top of legs, 1 by 8 inches. Half diagonal braces, 2 by 4 inches. G. Form scaffolds and carpenter's bracket scaffolds. 1. Brackets shall consist of a triangular-shaped frame made of wood with a cross-section not less than 2 inches by 3 inches, or of 1 1/4 inch x 1 1/4 inch x 1/8 inch structural angle iron. 2. Bolts used to attach brackets to structures shall not be less than 5/8 inches in diameter. 3. Maximum bracket spacing shall be 8 feet on centers. 4. No more than 2 employees shall occupy any given 8 feet of a bracket or form scaffold at any one time. Tools and materials shall not exceed 75 pounds in addition to the occupancy. 5. Wooden figure 4 scaffolds. Maximum intended load, 25 pounds per ft. 2. Uprights, 2 by 4 inches. Or 2 by 6 inches. Bearers, 2 1 by 6 inches. Braces, 1 by 6 inches. Maximum length of bearers, unsupported 3 feet 6 inches. I. Outrigger bearers shall consist of 2 pieces of 1 by 6 inch lumber nailed on opposite sides of the vertical support. 2. Bearers for wood figure 4 brackets shall project not more than 3 feet 6 inches from the outside of the form support, and shall be braced and secured to prevent tipping or turning. The knee or angle brace shall intersect the bearer at least 3 feet from the form at an angle of approximately 45 degrees, and the lower end shall be nailed to a vertical support. H. Roof bracket scaffolds. No specific guidelines or tables are given. I. Outrigger scaffolds, single level. No specific guidelines tables are given. J. Pump jack scaffolds. Wood poles shall not exceed 30 feet in height. Maximum intended load 500 pounds between poles, applied at the center of the span. Not more than 2 employees shall be on a pump jack scaffold at one time between any 2 supports. When 2x4s are spliced together to make a 4 by 4 inch wood pole, they shall be spliced with 10 penny common nails no more than 12 inches center to center, staggered uniformly from the opposite outside edges. K. Ladder jack scaffolds. Maximum intended load 25 pounds per ft. However, not more than 2 employees shall occupy any platform at any one time. Maximum span between supports shall be 8 feet. L. Window jack scaffolds. Not more than 1 employee shall occupy a window jack scaffold at any one time. M. Crawling boards, chicken ladders. Crawling boards shall be not less than 10 inches wide and 1 inch thick, with cleats having a minimum 1 by 1/2 inch cross-sectional area. The cleats shall be equal in length to the width of the board and spaced at equal intervals not to exceed 24 inches. N. Step, platform, and trestle ladder scaffolds. No additional guidelines or tables are given. O. Single-point adjustable suspension scaffolds. Maximum intended load 250 pound. Wood seats for bosun's chairs shall be not less than 1 inch thick if made of non-laminated wood, or 5/8 inches thick if made of marine quality plywood. P. 2-point adjustable suspension scaffolds. 1. In addition to direct connections to buildings, except window cleaners' anchors, acceptable ways to prevent scaffold sway include angulated roping and static lines. Angulated roping is a system of platform suspension in which the upper wire rope sheaves or suspension points are closer to the plane of the building face than the corresponding attachment points on the platform, thus causing the platform to press against the face of the building. Static lines are separate ropes secured at their top and bottom ends closer to the plane of the building face than the outermost edge of the platform. By drawing the static line taut, the platform is drawn against the face of the building. 2. On suspension scaffolds designed for a working load of 500 pounds, no more than 2 employees shall be permitted on the scaffold at one time. On suspension scaffolds with a working load of 750 pounds, no more than 3 employees shall be permitted on the scaffold at one time. 3. Ladder-type platforms. The side stringer shall be of clear straight-grained spruce. The rung shall be of straight-grained oak, ash, or hickory, at least 1 1/8 inches in diameter, with 7/8 inch tenons mortised into the side stringers at least 7/8 inch. The stringer shall be tied together with tie rods not less than 1/4 inch in diameter, passing through the stringers and riveted up tight against washers on both ends. The flooring strips shall be spaced not more than 5/8 inch apart, except at the side rails where the space may be 1 inch. Ladder-type platforms shall be constructed in accordance with the following table, see table on Appendix A. 4. Plank-type platforms. Plank-type platforms shall be composed of not less than nominal 2 by 8 inch unspliced planks, connected together on the underside with cleats at intervals not exceeding 4 feet, starting 6 inches from each end. A bar or other effective means shall be securely fastened to the platform at each end to prevent the platform from slipping off the hanger. The span between hangers for plank-type platforms shall not exceed 10 feet. 5. Beam-type platforms. Beam platforms shall have side stringers of lumber not less than 2 by 6 inches set on edge. The span between hangers shall not exceed 12 feet when beam platforms are used. The flooring shall be supported on 2 by 6 inch crossbeams, laid flat and set into the upper edge of the stringers with a snug fit, at intervals of not more than 4 feet, securely nailed to the crossbeams. Floorboards shall not be spaced more than half an inch apart. Q1. Multi-point adjustable suspension scaffolds and stonesetters. Multi-point adjustable suspension scaffolds. No specific guidelines or tables are given for these scaffolds. Q2. Mason's multi-point adjustable suspension scaffolds. Maximum intended load 50 lb/ft. 2. Each outrigger beam shall be at least a standard 7-inch, 15.3 pound steel I-beam, at least 15 feet long. Such beams shall not project more than 6 feet 6 inches beyond the bearing point. Where the overhang exceeds 6 feet 6 inches, outrigger beams shall be composed of stronger beams or multiple beams. R. Catenary scaffolds. 1. Maximum intended load 500 pounds. 2. Not more than 2 employees shall be permitted on the scaffold at one time. 3. Maximum capacity of come-along shall be 2,000 pounds. 4. Vertical pickups shall be spaced not more than 50 feet apart. 5. Rope shall be equivalent in strength to at least half an inch, 1.3 centimeters, diameter improved plow steel wire rope. S. Float, ship, scaffolds. 1. Maximum intended load 750 pounds. 2. Platforms shall be made of 3/4 inch plywood, equivalent in rating to American Plywood Association Grade BB, Group I, exterior. 3. Bearers shall be made from 2 by 4 inch, or 1 by 10 inch rough lumber. They shall be free of knots and other flaws. 4. Rope shall be equivalent in strength to at least 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters, diameter, first grade manila rope. T. Interior hung scaffolds. Bearers, use on edge 2 by 10 inches. Maximum intended load, maximum span, 25 pounds per square foot, 10 feet. 50 pounds per square foot is 10 feet, 75 pounds per square foot is 7 feet. U. Needle beam scaffolds. Maximum intended load, 25 pounds per square foot, beams, 4 by 6 inches. Maximum platform span, 8 feet, maximum beam span, 10 feet. 1. Rope shall be attached to the needle beams by a scaffold hitch or an I-splice. The loose end of the rope shall be tied by a bowline knot or by a round turn and a half hitch. 2. Rope shall be equivalent in strength to at least 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters, diameter, first grade manila rope. V. Multi-level suspension scaffolds. No additional guidelines or tables are being given for these scaffolds. W. Mobile scaffolds. Stability test as described in the ANSI A92 series documents, as appropriate for the type of scaffold, can be used to establish stability for the purpose of 1926.452, W6. X. Repair bracket scaffolds. No additional guidelines or tables are being given for these scaffolds. Y. Stilts. No specific guidelines or tables are given. Z. Tank builder's scaffold. 1. The maximum distance between brackets to which scaffolding and guardrail supports are attached shall be no more than 10 feet 6 inches. 2. Not more than 3 employees shall occupy a 10 feet 6 inch span of scaffold planking at any time. 3. A taut wire or synthetic rope supported on the scaffold brackets shall be installed at the scaffold plank level between the innermost edge of the scaffold platform and the curved plate structure of the tank shell to serve as a safety line in lieu of an inner guardrail assembly where the space between the scaffold platform and the tank exceeds 12 inches, 30.48 centimeters. In the event the open space on either side of the rope exceeds 12 inches (30.48 centimeters), a second wire or synthetic rope appropriately placed, or guardrails in accordance with Section 1926.451 G4, shall be installed in order to reduce that open space to less than 12 inches (30.48 centimeters). 4. Scaffold planks of rough full dimension 2 inch, 5.1 centimeters, x 12 inch, 30.5 centimeters, Douglas fir or southern yellow pine of select structural grade shall be used. Douglas fir planks shall have a fiber stress of at least 1900 lb/in, 2, 130,929 n/cm, 2, and a modulus of elasticity of at least 1,900,000 lb/in, 2, 130,929,000 n/cm, 2, while a yellow pine plank shall have a fiber stress of at least 2,500 lb/in, 2, 172,275 n/cm, 2, and a modulus of elasticity of at least 2 million lb/in, 2, 137,820,000 n/cm, 2. 5. Guardrails shall be constructed of a taut wire or synthetic rope, and shall be supported by angle irons attached to brackets welded to the steel plates. These guardrails shall comply with Seconds 1926.451 G4. Guardrail supports shall be located at no greater than 10 feet 6-inch intervals. Appendix B. Criteria for determining the feasibility of providing safe access and fall protection for scaffold erectors and dismantlers is reserved. Appendix C. List of National Consensus Standards. ANSI/SAA 92.2-1990 Vehicle-Mounted Elevating and Rotating Aerial Devices. ANSI/SAA 92.3-1990 Manually Propelled Elevating Aerial Platforms. ANSI/SAA 92.5-1990 Boom-Supported Elevating Work Platforms. ANSI/SAA 92.6-1990 Self-Propelled Elevating Work Platforms. ANSI/SAA 92.7-1990 Airline Ground Support Vehicle-Mounted Vertical Lift Devices. ANSI/SAA 92.8-1993 Vehicle-Mounted Bridge Inspection and Maintenance Devices. ANSI/SAA 92.9-1993 Mast Climbing Work Platforms. Appendix D. List of training topics for scaffold erectors and dismantlers. This Appendix D is provided to serve as a guide to assist employers when evaluating the training needs of employees erecting or dismantling supported scaffolds. The agency believes that employees erecting or dismantling scaffolds should be trained in the following topics: general overview of scaffolding, regulations and standards, erection/dismantling planning, PPE and proper procedures, fall protection, materials handling, access, working platforms, foundations, guys, ties and braces, tubular welded frame scaffolds, specific regulations and standards, components, parts inspection, erection/dismantling planning, guys, ties and braces, fall protection, general safety, access and platforms, erection/dismantling procedures, rolling scaffold assembly, put logs, tube and clamp scaffolds, specific regulations and standards, components, parts inspection, erection/dismantling planning, guys, ties and braces, fall protection, general safety, access and platforms, erection/dismantling procedures, buttresses, cantilevers, and bridges, system scaffolds, specific regulations and standards, components, parts inspection, erection/dismantling planning, guys, ties and braces, fall protection, general safety, access and platforms, erection/dismantling procedures, buttresses, cantilevers, and bridges. Scaffold erectors and dismantlers should all receive the general overview, and, in addition, specific training for the type of supported scaffold being erected or dismantled. Appendix E. Drawings and Illustrations. This appendix provides drawings of particular types of scaffolds and scaffold components, and graphic illustrations of bracing patterns and tie spacing patterns. This appendix is intended to provide visual guidance to assist the user in complying with the requirements of Subpart L, Part 1926. Bracing, tub and coupler scaffolds. Suspended scaffold platform welding precautions. See Appendix E for maximum vertical guy, tie or brace spacing wider than 3 foot bases. See Appendix E for maximum vertical guy, tie or brace spacing narrower than 3 foot bases. Example of scaffold plank stamp. Tube and coupler scaffold. Scaffold work surfaces, laminated veneer lumber, LVL. Solid saw lumber. Fabricated scaffold deck. Fabricated scaffold plank. Decorator plank. Stage platform. Outrigger scaffold.